Mark had always liked old houses. They had character, stories hidden in every corner. That's why he had bought this one, despite its creaking floors and peeling paint. Lately, he had decided to renovate the basement. It was dusty and dark, with broken shelves and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like forgotten memories. But Mark saw potential. He imagined it as a place where he could work on projects, a workshop, or even just a quiet retreat. One evening, after a long day of lifting old boards and scrubbing grimy walls, Mark felt something hard beneath the floor. It wasn't a stone, he was sure of that, and it wasn't a pipe. Curious, he knelt and started digging around it with a crowbar in his hands. The dust made him sneeze, and the air smelled earthy and old, but he didn't stop. After a few minutes, the outline of a strange metallic object became clear. It was a pod, perfectly smooth, unlike anything Mark had ever seen. Strange symbols glowing faintly ran across its surface. His heart began to pound. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something he could not explain. Mark hesitated. The pod seemed alive in a way he couldn't describe. It emitted a soft hum, almost musical, vibrating through his fingertips. A thin panel slid open slowly when he pressed it, revealing a dim, glowing interior. And then he saw her. Inside the pod was a figure lying perfectly still. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, catching the faint light in the basement. Even through the mist inside the pod, her form was graceful, delicate, otherworldly. Her face, serene and beautiful, looked almost human, yet there was something in her features, alien yet familiar, that made Mark's chest tighten. She had long, flowing hair that seemed to float, and her fingers were slim and elegant, resting lightly against her body, as if she were sleeping peacefully. Mark felt a rush of fear and awe at the same time. He had discovered life that was not from Earth. His hands trembled as he reached closer, unsure whether to touch her or not. The pod hissed softly, and a mist of unknown origin filled the air, carrying a faint, sweet scent that made his head spin. He took a step back, his mind racing. "Is this real?" he whispered to himself. He wanted to shout, to call someone, but he knew no one would believe him. How could he explain this? A beautiful alien lying asleep in his basement in a pod that had been buried for decades, maybe centuries. He felt a shiver run down his spine. Mark spent the night sitting beside the pod, unable to sleep. He thought about what this meant. Was she dangerous? Could she even survive in Earth's environment? And yet there was something in her stillness, a fragile beauty that spoke of innocence and trust. He felt an unexpected protectiveness rise in him. Whatever this being was, he knew he couldn't just leave her here. Not like this. He studied the pod's controls, trying to understand them. The symbols were foreign, but he noticed patterns. Slowly, carefully, he pressed a few buttons, hoping not to harm her. The pod responded with soft lights and a low hum, almost as if it recognized his presence. Mark felt a strange connection forming, a bond that went beyond language or species. As dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight filtered into the basement through the dusty window. The pod glowed brighter under the sunlight, and Mark felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and awe. He realized that his life, his quiet, ordinary life, was about to change forever. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or what would happen next. But one thing was certain: he had found something incredible, something that could redefine everything he knew about the universe. And in that moment, Mark made a silent promise. He would protect her no matter the cost. The alien beauty in the pod stirred slightly, and Mark's heart skipped a beat. His journey had just begun. Mark couldn't sleep that night. His mind kept turning over the image of her, the alien beauty lying in the pod, so fragile yet so mesmerizing. He had read and reread every word in the strange manual that had come with the pod. He didn't understand most of it, but one section seemed to control the awakening sequence. He hesitated, knowing that pressing the wrong button could hurt her, or worse, destroy her. After hours of studying, he made a decision. He pressed the combination slowly, carefully, and held his breath. The pod hissed and vibrated, the mist inside thickening and swirling. Then a soft light enveloped her, warm and gentle, unlike anything Mark had seen. Her chest rose slightly, tiny movements that told him she was coming back to life. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing colors that seemed impossible, shifting shades of blue, violet, and gold that danced like a galaxy inside her gaze. Mark stepped back, overwhelmed by the beauty and intelligence reflected in them. Her gaze met his, and for a moment time seemed to stop. She studied him carefully, her expression a mixture of fear, wonder, and curiosity. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice like a melody, soft yet full of meaning. Mark realized he could understand her perfectly, though she did not speak a language he had ever known. It was as if her words reached not just his ears but his mind directly. "You're safe," Mark said gently, stepping closer. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Mark." He didn't know why he felt the need to introduce himself to her, but somehow it felt necessary, as if giving her a name could anchor her in this strange new world. She tilted her head, studying him carefully. "I don't understand. Where is home?" There was a trembling vulnerability in her voice that pulled at Mark's heart. He wanted to reach out and touch her hand, but he was afraid of frightening her. Still, the pull was too strong, and he gently laid his hand near hers. The moment their fingers brushed, warmth and trust seemed to flow between them. "My home is far away," she admitted softly. "I would traveled so long." Her eyes glistened with the faintest hint of tears. Mark's chest tightened. She was alone. She had been asleep for what must have been centuries, drifting without anyone to care for her. And now she was here, stranded on Earth with only him to protect her. Mark felt a mix of awe, fear, and compassion. He had discovered life beyond Earth, life that was far more beautiful and intelligent than he could have imagined. And yet she was fragile, vulnerable, and human enough in her emotions to need comfort and protection. He realized that this was a responsibility unlike anything he had ever faced. Over the next few hours, Mark helped her out of the pod. She moved slowly at first, every motion graceful and deliberate, like she was rediscovering her own body. She touched the walls, the floor, even the air, marveling at the texture, the sounds, and the smells of Earth. Mark watched silently, fascinated by her wonder and careful not to disturb her. Finally, she turned to him. "Why, do you help me?" Her eyes searched his, filled with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Mark smiled gently. "Because it's the right thing to do. You don't deserve to be alone, and I think maybe I need you as much as you need me." For the first time, she smiled back. It was small, almost shy, but it lit up the room. In that smile, Mark saw hope. A fragile, shining hope that maybe together they could face whatever this strange world held for her. The basement, once dark and ordinary, now felt alive. It was no longer just a renovation project. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. Mark realized that his life and the life of this alien being had intertwined in a way neither of them could have predicted. And deep down, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days passed in a blur for Mark and Lyra. The alien beauty, he had learned her name was Lyra, was slowly adjusting to Earth. Everything fascinated her. The sound of birds, the way sunlight bounced off water, the smell of rain-soaked soil. She asked endless questions, and Mark did his best to answer. Lyra told him about her home, a distant star system where her people had explored countless worlds. They were explorers, scientists, travelers who cherished knowledge above all else. But disaster had struck. A violent cosmic storm had destroyed her ship, and she had been placed into emergency stasis. She had drifted through the void for centuries alone until she landed in Mark's basement. Mark listened, amazed. He had never imagined a universe so vast or life so different from Earth's. Yet there was a sadness in Lyra's voice, a longing for the family and friends she had lost. She missed them, even though she had not known them for long. Mark felt a lump in his throat. The weight of her loneliness was almost too much to bear. "You survived all this," Mark said quietly one evening as they sat together in the dim light of the basement, all alone. "For so long." Lyra nodded, her eyes shimmering. "I did not know I could survive. Until now." She reached for his hand. "You helped me. You are brave." Mark shook his head, embarrassed. "I don't know about brave. I couldn't leave you there." She studied him for a long moment and then smiled softly. "Humans are different from what I expected. You are strong even when you do not know it. You care even when it is hard." Her words struck him deeply. He had always thought of himself as ordinary. But through Lyra's eyes, he realized that humanity's strength was not in weapons or technology. It was in empathy, in courage, in the willingness to protect someone who is vulnerable. They spent hours talking, sharing stories. Mark told her about life on Earth, his childhood, the small joys of his town, the struggles and victories of ordinary people. Lyra shared stories of distant planets, of civilizations that thrived and fell, of knowledge that humans could barely imagine. Mark was in awe. Here was a being who had seen the universe, who had lived through wonders and horrors he couldn't comprehend, and yet, she trusted him. One night, as they sat side by side on the basement floor, Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder. "You show me what humans are," she whispered. "Not just the world I landed on, but the heart of it. You remind me that hope exists even in small places." Mark felt warmth spread through his chest. Her words were like sunlight breaking through a storm. He realized then that their bond went beyond curiosity or fear. It was trust, respect, and something deeper, something that neither of them had expected to find. Days turned into a rhythm. Mark worked on securing the basement, improving the air and light for Lyra. She watched him, fascinated by his resourcefulness. And he in turn watched her learn, marveling at the intelligence and grace in every movement. Together they became a team, learning from one another. And yet the weight of the outside world loomed. Mark knew their safety was temporary. Government agencies, scientists, and opportunists would never understand Lyra, and if they discovered her, the consequences could be catastrophic. But in these quiet moments, as the dust settled and sunlight poured through the basement window, Mark felt a spark of hope. Humanity had given Lyra a chance at life again, and in doing so, she reminded him of what made humans extraordinary: courage, compassion, and the ability to rise above fear. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a universe he could never fully grasp. "Thank you for everything," she said softly, "for letting me live, for letting me see Earth, for trusting me." Mark smiled, feeling an emotion he could not name, a mixture of pride, love, and awe. He realized that meeting Lyra was not just her chance to survive. It was his chance to see the best of humanity reflected in her gaze. In the quiet of the basement, two beings from entirely different worlds were learning from each other, discovering a connection that transcended planets, species, and time. And in that connection, something extraordinary was beginning to grow. Mark had hoped their quiet days would continue, but the world outside the basement was moving faster than he realized. One evening, as he returned from the hardware store with supplies, he noticed a black SUV parked near his driveway. Two men in dark suits were watching his house, their expressions cold and calculating. A chill ran down his spine. He had a feeling, an instinct, that something was wrong. Inside, Lyra sensed it too. She had learned to read subtle human cues, and the tension in Mark's movements made her alert. "Who are they?" she asked, her voice soft but serious. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but I think they know about you. About the pod." Panic rose in him, sharp and sudden. He had thought their secret was safe, hidden beneath layers of dust and concrete. But now it seemed inevitable. Someone was coming for her. Someone who wouldn't care about her life, her safety, or the trust she had placed in him. They spent the night planning. Mark barricaded the basement door, reinforced the windows, and set up makeshift alarms. Lyra moved silently, her alien senses attuned to the smallest vibrations and sounds. Together, they created a network of signals and hiding spots, relying on each other in ways neither had ever experienced. The following day, the men arrived. They were polite at first, asking questions about renovations, neighbors, and the house's history. But Mark could see the truth in their eyes. They were here for one purpose: to take Lyra. Mark's heart pounded. He stepped in front of her, blocking the doorway. "She doesn't belong to anyone but herself," he said firmly. "You can't take her." The men exchanged glances, their expressions hardening. One reached for a device that glowed faintly in his hand. Mark realized it was some kind of tracking or immobilizing tool. Fear and adrenaline surged through him. He had never fought anyone like this, but he couldn't let them take her. Not now, not ever. Lyra stepped beside him, her presence calm but powerful. "I trust him," she said, her voice steady. "We will not let you harm me." There was authority in her tone, a quiet confidence that made Mark's chest swell with pride. The confrontation escalated quickly. Mark used his knowledge of the basement layout, leading the men into narrow spaces where they couldn't maneuver easily. Lyra, though gentle in appearance, moved with speed and precision, using her strength in ways that were both surprising and graceful. Together, they created chaos, buying time to escape. One of the men shouted, frustration boiling over. "You don't understand what this is. She's not human. You're putting yourself in danger." Mark glared back. "You're underestimating humans. And you're underestimating me." For a moment, Lyra and Mark moved as one, her alien reflexes complementing his human ingenuity. They slipped through hidden passages Mark had discovered during renovations, escaping into the forest behind the house. The men pursued them briefly but quickly lost track, their impatience and lack of knowledge about the terrain giving Mark and Lyra the advantage. Finally, they stopped, panting and exhausted, leaning against the trunks of tall trees. Lyra's silver skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, her eyes reflecting both fear and awe. "You saved me," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Mark smiled, trying to calm the racing of his heart. "We saved each other," he said. "I couldn't let them take you. Not ever." She placed a delicate hand on his arm, warmth and trust radiating from her touch. "Humans are stronger than I thought. You are stronger than I thought." Mark realized then that their bond had changed. They were no longer just protector and alien. They were allies, friends, maybe something more, united against a world that didn't yet understand them. And as they stood together in the quiet forest, the enormity of what lay ahead settled over them. Danger was not over, and survival would demand everything they had. But for the first time, Mark felt confident.
Together they could face anything.
Humanity, he thought, had proven its courage, even in a small basement on one ordinary planet. Mark and Lyra moved carefully through the forest, hearts pounding, ears straining for any sound of pursuit. The night was dark, but the moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. Every snap of a twig made Mark flinch, and Lyra's glowing eyes scanned the surroundings with sharp focus. They were fugitives now, running from people who saw Lyra as nothing more than an object, a curiosity to control. "I've never seen Earth like this," Lyra whispered, her voice soft but filled with wonder. She crouched beside a stream, letting her fingers touch the cool water. It rippled across her silver skin, reflecting moonlight in tiny bursts. "It is beautiful," Mark smiled, though his heart was heavy with fear. "Yeah, it is. But right now we need to focus. They're still out there. We need to find a safe place." Lyra nodded, and together they moved deeper into the forest. Mark had memorized the map of the area from his childhood walks. Paths, old tunnels, hidden clearings. He led them to an abandoned cabin several miles away, overgrown with vines and almost invisible from the road. It wasn't much, but it offered shelter and a chance to rest. Inside, they collapsed onto the dusty floor, breathing hard. Lyra looked at Mark, her eyes wide and filled with gratitude. "You risked yourself for me," she said softly. "Why?" Mark shrugged, embarrassed but honest. "I couldn't leave you. You're not just some alien pod. You're alive. You have thoughts, feelings. You deserve to live." She smiled faintly, a small glimmer of warmth. "Humans are different from what I imagined. Strong, kind, brave." She reached out, brushing her hand against his. The contact was electric, a connection neither could ignore. Mark felt a strange sense of peace in her presence, as if the chaos of the world outside didn't exist here. They spent hours planning. Supplies were limited, and the world beyond the cabin was dangerous. But Lyra's intelligence amazed Mark. She quickly understood his plans, asked questions, and suggested ideas that were practical and clever. Her alien perspective turned his human knowledge into something stronger, more effective. Together they became a team, bound not just by necessity but by trust. By dawn, the cabin was quiet. Lyra sat by the window, watching the sun rise, its light reflecting off her shimmering skin. "I have seen many stars," she said softly, "many worlds. But Earth was different. I feel something here, something I do not understand." Mark joined her, placing a hand gently over hers. "It's called hope," he said. "It's what keeps us going even when the world tries to break us. And I think it's what brought us together." Lyra looked at him, eyes reflecting the colors of distant galaxies. "You are human," she whispered, "but you inspire me. I thought I was alone, but now I'm not." Mark felt a lump in his throat. He had expected to rescue her, to protect her, but now he realized that she had changed him too. She had shown him courage, patience, and a way to see the universe beyond his small world. In her eyes, humanity was extraordinary, capable of empathy, bravery, and hope. The quiet of the cabin was broken only by the soft rustle of leaves outside and the distant sound of birds beginning their day. For the first time since discovering the pod, Mark allowed himself to relax. Lyra was safe for now. They had escaped danger, but the world beyond still waited. Yet in this small cabin, with sunlight streaming through broken windows, Mark and Lyra found something rare: trust, companionship, and a shared understanding that crossed species, stars, and lifetimes. They were no longer just a man and an alien stranded on Earth. They were allies, friends, and perhaps something more, united by survival and a bond that neither could ignore. Mark whispered, almost to himself, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Lyra's hand tightened over his and she nodded. Together. For the first time, the future felt possible, bright, and full of promise. And even in a dangerous world, Mark realized that humanity, through courage, heart, and hope, could rise to meet any challenge. Days turned into weeks as Mark and Lyra hid in the remote cabin. The world outside continued unaware of the extraordinary life they protected. But inside, a new world was forming, a world of trust, understanding, and quiet discovery. Lyra explored Earth with cautious curiosity. She marveled at the texture of trees, the scent of flowers, the sound of birdsong that Mark had once taken for granted. Mark watched her, captivated, as she experienced life with wonder and innocence despite everything she had survived. Each day he felt his admiration for her deepen, not just for her beauty, but for her resilience, her intelligence, and her kindness. "You enjoy small things," she said one evening as they watched fireflies drift across the clearing. "I thought stars and galaxies were the most beautiful, but Earth has life, and it is remarkable." Mark smiled, feeling warmth spread in his chest. "It is, and you remind me to see it again. Sometimes we forget to notice what's right in front of us." Lyra's gaze softened. "You see me as I am, not strange, not dangerous, but alive." Her voice trembled slightly as if she was afraid to fully admit the depth of her feelings. Mark reached out, gently holding her hand. "Because you are. You're alive and you deserve to be seen for everything you are." The trust between them deepened. Mark shared his past, his childhood dreams, his fears, and the moments he had felt powerless. Lyra listened without judgment, her eyes full of understanding. Then she shared her memories, the beauty of alien worlds, the companionship of her crew, and the loneliness of drifting through space. Suspended between life and death in those moments, Mark realized that Lyra had endured unimaginable hardship, yet she still believed in connection, in kindness, in hope, and she had chosen to trust him. It was a lesson he could not ignore. Humanity's strength was not in technology or power, but in the capacity to care, to fight for others, even when the odds were against them. One evening, a storm rolled in, drumming rain against the cabin roof. Mark lit a small fire and they sat close together, warmth bridging the space between their worlds. Lyra leaned her head lightly on his shoulder. "I am grateful," she whispered, "for your courage and your heart. You have taught me something important." "What is that?" Mark asked softly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. Lyra looked up at him, eyes shimmering like distant galaxies. "Humans can inspire. You are extraordinary, not because of strength or skill, but because of love. Bravery is not just in battle. It is in the choice to protect, to care, to hope." Mark's throat tightened. He had expected to be her protector, to guide her through a strange world. But in truth, she had changed him too. She had shown him the best of humanity reflected through her eyes: courage, compassion, and a light that refused to be extinguished. As the storm raged outside, Mark and Lyra sat together in silence, letting the moment settle. No words were needed. Their bond spoke louder than any language, transcending species, distance, and experience. Here, in the heart of an ordinary Earth forest, two beings from different worlds had found understanding, trust, and an emotional connection that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Mark finally understood the truth Lyra had seen from the beginning. Humanity could rise to any challenge, and its greatest power lay not in machines or weapons, but in its heart, and in protecting her. He had discovered that strength within himself, strength born from love, hope, and unwavering courage. Lyra's hand tightened over his, and for the first time in centuries she felt truly safe. Mark looked at her, and in that gaze he saw not just survival, but something more: possibility, connection, and the beginning of a bond that neither time nor distance could break. Together, they faced the storm, not as alien and human, not as protector and protected, but as two souls united by trust, courage, and the extraordinary potential of what humanity could be. Mark and Lyra had survived weeks on the run. Every night brought fear, every day brought uncertainty. But through it all, they had learned to trust each other, to rely on courage, and to see hope in even the smallest details. Now, standing at the edge of the forest, they faced the sunrise together, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink. "We can't stay here forever," Mark said, his voice calm but heavy with the truth. "The world, it's dangerous. People will keep looking for you." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the rising sun. "I know, but I am ready to move forward, to return to the stars, or to stay, if that is what you wish." Mark swallowed hard. He had grown to care for her more than he could put into words. Protecting her had been his duty, but over time it had become something deeper. "I want you to be safe," he said. "Wherever that is, I will help you get there, and I will remember every moment we've shared." Her hand brushed against his, gentle and firm, grounding him. "You have taught me. Humans are capable of extraordinary courage, even when small, even when alone, even when ordinary. You saved me, Mark, and in doing so, you showed me humanity's heart." Mark felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. She was right. Humanity's strength was not in power or technology, but in bravery, compassion, and the willingness to rise above fear for the sake of another being. And in that truth, he had discovered something remarkable about himself. He was capable of more than he had ever imagined. They spent one last night at the cabin, sharing stories, laughing softly, and reflecting on everything they had endured. Lyra spoke of the stars she had seen, the worlds she had visited, and the crew she had lost. Mark told her of the simple joys of Earth, the people he loved, and the courage he had found within himself. When dawn broke, they prepared for the journey ahead. Lyra's pod, now repaired and powered, glimmered faintly in the morning light. It had carried her across galaxies, and now it would carry her to safety. Mark stood beside her, reluctant but resolute. "I will never forget you," Lyra said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You are the reason I survived. You are the reason I believe in humanity. You have shown me hope, in a way I thought I had lost forever." Mark nodded, his throat tight. "And I will never forget you, Lyra. You've changed my life, and the way I see the universe. You've reminded me that even ordinary people can do extraordinary things." With a final lingering glance, Lyra entered the pod. The metallic door hissed closed, and the glow of her presence filled the clearing. Then slowly the pod lifted into the sky, light reflecting across the forest like a miniature sun. Mark watched, heart swelling with pride, sadness, and awe. As the pod disappeared into the horizon, he whispered, "Goodbye, Lyra, and thank you." The forest was silent, save for the wind rustling through the trees. And in that quiet, Mark realized something profound. Humanity had proven itself worthy. Not through weapons, not through conquest, but through courage, empathy, and the choice to protect another life. Lyra would carry the memory of Earth with her, and he would carry the memory of her. Their lives, though separated by distance and species, were forever intertwined. Humanity, he now understood, was extraordinary, not because it conquered worlds, but because it could rise above fear and make impossible choices, guided by heart and hope. Mark turned back toward the cabin, sunlight warming his face. The world was ordinary again, yet it felt different. He had faced something extraordinary and survived, carrying the lessons of courage, empathy, and love. And somewhere among the stars, Lyra carried the proof that humanity could shine brighter than the galaxies themselves. For Mark, and for the human race, the journey was only beginning. And now he knew, no challenge, no matter how vast, could ever dim the light of courage and hope that burned in a human heart.